Hi, Corinne. Thanks for coming to the podcast.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
All right. So, we're going to talk today about trauma and weight.
All right. Nice light topic.
Nice light topic. So, for the audience, Corinne's a crier, I'm a crier, but we might laugh. Who knows? We're just going
Mhm.
to go with it. I mean, it might be some heavy stuff. It might be wherever the conversation takes us. Um, I just know that members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, we don't have a lot of vices. We don't drink, we don't smoke. There's a lot of, we have a health code that gives us some very defined boundaries. So for many members, it becomes food and eating and sugar. And I will say, weight has never been my problem. I'm 120 pounds. And if anything, being underweight has been my problem. So this isn't a topic that I naturally thought of, but I do think it will benefit a lot of people. And you, Corinne, have so much experience in this realm of weight and body and all of that. Um, so I want to hear your thoughts. But before that, I just wanted to bring up the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study. I'm going to drop the link for anybody who's listening about this. I found a fantastic link that kind of really general overview, but gives the details of what it was. But basically, it started with an obesity study. In 1985, Dr. Vincent Felitti, chief of Kaiser Permanente's Department of Preventative Medicine, was doing an obesity study, and he noticed that every year, more than half of the people in his obesity clinic were dropping out, and it was puzzling him. And so he went to figure out, why are these people who are losing weight, why are they dropping out of the study? And basically he found out that like so many of them, I don't remember the exact statistic, I think it was like half, had experienced childhood sexual abuse or some kind of adverse experience. So if anyone is out there listening and struggling with body image or weight issues, here on my podcast, you know that I talk about trauma, and I wanted to have Corinne on to just get her thoughts about the relationship between trauma and weight and all of that. So I'm just going to start, Corinne, with a very general question. Like, what do you think about that relationship between weight and trauma?
I just think it's for real. So I've coached thousands of women at this point, and very often what I notice, especially in a lot of my clients who have like over 100 pounds to lose, like I have, they at some point did experience some type of trauma as a child. And they have used, at the time, the only way to cope was to eat. Like it was just, I mean, if you think about, especially when you're a child, whether, you're real little, 3 or 4 years old, or you're in your teens, so much of the brain's ability to be able to make sense of things and truly reason and see things long term and stuff, or even be able to distinguish, this is not a me problem. This is like an outside of me thing that's happening. Like there's nothing wrong with me, doesn't even come online until like our 20s. And
Yeah.
most people don't even teach us that stuff. So like most of us are just walking around thinking whatever coping mechanism we dealt with, that we figured out as a child, now as an adult, we use it as a weapon of mass destruction against us. It's like, like as a child, you might have, I was coaching someone the other day. She had sexual trauma at 13.
Mhm.
And one of her biggest fears was, if she loses weight, more people will pay attention to her. And so, like, when we kind of went back and looked at it, she noticed that, oh, like my parents didn't think it was a big deal. They told me that, like, I should dress different, that, like, which they were probably well intended. Like, they probably were not trying to traumatize her. They were just trying to, like, figure out, like, how do I keep her safe? So often, some of the mental side of things starts from a well-intended parent at some point, trying to figure out in their panic mode, how do I make sense of all of it? So she would eat. And she noticed that the bigger she got, the less people paid attention to her, especially men. And
Mhm.
it reasoned to her that that was a really good way to stay safe. Well, now she's like in her 50s and having a hard time losing weight. And she's like, every time I lose weight, it's like there's a certain point when people start noticing me, I just start panicking. I just start thinking like, oh, I just wish they wouldn't talk to me. I just wish they wouldn't do all this. So we kind of pieced it all together. And then when we did, it made a lot of sense for her that what she needed now, like she could continue trying to lose weight, but what she really needed was to create safety in her body around attention. She really needed to talk to her, like do some inner child work. She needed to do a lot of stuff like that so that losing weight was not a dangerous event, because that's the way her brain treated it. So it's just very common. And I will say, with all of my experience, I tell my clients this also. There's like the two traumas, the big T's, which is like what my client experienced. And then there's series and series and series of little T traumas that can happen over a lifetime that, especially when you're young, they add up and they just feel like a big T at some point. And that's kind of more what happened to me. I never had big T trauma, but I definitely had lots of like small traumas. I was very bullied in school. Like my body was highlighted by like every man in my life when I was young, except for my grandfather. Like I got the message, something like my body was wrong. I was too big. I remember my parents were divorced. I rarely saw my father. And when we did, like once a year, we would see him. He would sing the hefty, hefty bag trash commercial to me because I was overweight. And, you know, I internalized all of that amongst other things. And so by the time that I was in my 20s and early 30s, there was just a lot of like food insecurity issues for me. I was very poor growing up. I had a lot of like fear that for me, when I would date someone, that I'd lose them.
Mm.
And like, even when I got married to my husband, I spent a lot of our relationship like testing his love, just trying to like I was like, how far can I push him? It's almost like I needed to know, like I could make him really angry and I could do all this stuff and he won't leave me, because so many people had left me in my life. So it's I think they go hand in hand. I think it's like I don't doubt it one bit. And I think there's more walking wounded out there than we know.
Oh, I love that term, walking wounded.
Yeah.
Yeah. I went to your website. So for the audience, no BS, what is it?
Weight loss.
No BS weight loss.com. And I was reading your about page and oh, that 13-year-old, that picture of Corinne at 13.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just like, I just love her.
Oh yeah. I
Well,
keep a picture of her on my little wall over here. I feel like a big shelf. And my friend Rachel Hart, she had given us a talk one time and I got to be there, where she was talking about one of the things that she had worked through in therapy was doing a lot of talking to little Rachel and how like helpful it was. And so I had reached out to her after a talk and I was like, that just really resonated with me. Like so often I feel like I want to just take little Corinne and hug her and say, I fixed everything. Like we did it. Like you can just, and I do that now. Like at the time when she was talking about it, I was not doing inner child work, but it really resonated with me. And in my own coaching now, I do a lot of going back, sitting with Corinne, talking to her. Sometimes she has wisdom for me in present day. Like very often she'll tell me, I just want you to be more grateful for what you have. Like I dreamed of this. I am a crier.
Yeah,
You
I
are
know.
100% right.
I
And so, and
know.
then sometimes I like comfort her to say like, it's all okay. You know, like you don't have to ask for this anymore. You can rest now. And so anyway, Rachel sent me a silver frame that says little Corinne at the top, and at the bottom it says, would you say that to her?
Mhm.
So on my tough days, I always look at that. I look at her little face. And I'm like, no, I would never say this to her ever.
Yeah. So that's what you're talking about when you're referring to inner child work, is sort of imagining a younger version of you and having a relationship with her, speaking to her, listening to her as
Yeah.
well,
Yeah,
right?
a lot
Yeah.
of times I will like write. Sometimes I do it with my coach. Sometimes I just write, like I'll be writing about something that's going on and I'll ask myself, like, where did this start? Or like, why do I think that now? Like, why is this so scary for me now? And very often, like an old childhood memory will come up for me.
Mhm.
And I have remembered so many things that I had forgotten, just
Mhm.
for years
Mhm.
by doing that. And it would like, it's like, oh, it makes sense. And so then I'll write to that version of me and talk about like, what do you most need me doing now? Like,
Mhm.
what is it that you're afraid of? What would you like me to know? Like, what's going on for you? And then sometimes I'm like, we don't have to worry about that anymore. That's just an old fear. Like, we have already solved all of that. Or sometimes it'll be something newer that I've not been thinking about. And I'm like, okay, this is stuff that I can like work on in my present day life. So I do it with a combo of talk or with some journaling sometimes.
Yeah. I think that my audience will really resonate with this idea that you never had kind of that big T trauma, like sexual abuse, or, in a way, you lost a parent through divorce, but we often think of like, well, my parent didn't die or whatever. We justify a lot, right?
Mhm.
But one of my questions, if you're willing to share, is why, like, we see a lot about the before and afters, the Corinne who was in her 30s, who was 100 pounds overweight, and how you lost that weight and you did it by loving yourself and never giving up, and no BS, that the way you talk to yourself, all of that. I'm curious about, like you said, how did we get here in the first place? Right? What were some of those things? If you want to share, if you feel comfortable sharing, like, why was food the thing, or maybe some of those underlying feelings that, how
Well,
did
I
you get
know why food is one that I've, naturally because I've worked on it. I definitely know kind of what was going on there. For me, when I was growing up, we were so poor. Like my mom, she was 17 when she had me. My parents got married. Then she had my brother at 19. And then my parents were divorced by the time she was 21. And it was just the three of us. And she had a very low education. So she worked all the time and only made minimum wage. So she needed two minimum wage jobs to not even get a decent salary, just to be able to make sure that we ate on a semi-regular basis. And so growing up for me, like one of the things that was hard for me when I was losing weight was not overeating at night. Very often for me, the only meals we got like in the summers and stuff was dinner. We
Mhm.
didn't have breakfast and we didn't have lunch. We had some days we didn't get to eat at all. Like we just ran out of food and we'd have to wait for a paycheck, or we'd have to wait until she could figure out if one of her, like sometimes she would work at hotels and stuff, if they would let her use her employee meal for one adult meal to just feed me and my brother. And so for me growing up, like when you got food, you needed to overeat, and you needed to overeat in order to feel safe because you didn't know when it was coming again. When I was in my 20s and 30s, when I had plenty of, like, I mean, I was never rich or anything, but food was not scarce. Like if I wanted to eat, I could. Well, I got to where it was really hard for me to stop at enough. I was always overeating as if you shouldn't waste any food. You don't know when I traded legit not knowing when the next meal was at the age of 13 to not knowing if I was going, like being worried about this meal because I didn't know where I'd go out to eat that night. So I would
Mhm.
eat up at this one as if, like there was some kind of impending danger. The danger was, well, I don't know if I'll get what I like, but
Mm.
my brain, like from the trauma, couldn't distinguish the two.
Yeah.
It was just fear around waiting for food, period. And it
Yeah.
treated food insecurity, it treated it just as importantly as like I don't know if I get to pick the restaurant tonight.
Yeah, yeah. And I just made a connection in my mind between too little for too long, which is one version of trauma, right? It could
Yes.
be maybe you didn't have enough attention or affection from a parent, but in
Yes.
your case, it was literally too little food,
Yeah.
right? With this scarcity mentality, right? The mindset that we get stuck in of like, there might not be enough. There might not be enough. There might not be enough. Right. And I had never really made that connection before, like from a survival point of view, which is trauma has a lot to do with survival,
Yes.
that sometimes scarcity is real.
Yes.
Right. And then sometimes it moves into that emotional zone, the perception of not enoughness, which is what we do when we're looking at mindsets, right? Is like, is it true that there's not enough?
Right.
Right? But you're just telling the story of it literally was not enough, right?
Yeah.
So for anyone listening, I just want to point out, if you feel like you're stuck in a not enoughness cycle, it might have started with a legitimate not enough.
Yeah. And for a lot of people with weight loss, now I know you're a trauma coach. I teach a lot of diet trauma.
Mm.
For one of the other things that came up for me and that I teach heavily inside my program is that most women that need to lose weight, if you've been on diets before, you have probably had inflicted on you some types of diet trauma. So, for example, the body does not like being starved. Like it just doesn't like it. Its whole job is to try to get you to eat. It like thinks it's very easy for the body to primitively think a famine's coming, whether one's or not. For a lot of us, we didn't grow up broke like Corinne and stuff, but we did jerky diets that, like I remember doing diets. I did this one called the military diet. It was horrible. Like you ate like 2 hot dogs without buns for breakfast. And then you've got like a grapefruit. Like it was the weirdest. And there was a scoop of ice cream thrown in the middle. I mean, it was just the weirdest combination of foods. And then you did that for 3 days and there wasn't much food involved. And then for 4 days, you could eat all you want. Talk
Mhm.
about creating a traumatic experience for your brain. Like, eat all you want as if there's no boundaries. So override everything your body says about what it needs. Then on these other 3 days, don't eat hardly anything and don't eat anything you like. Just only eat these things as if like you needed to be punished. And then your body gets tripwired into not getting enough calories. When the body has done enough diets where there has been restriction, severe restriction, like 1,200, 1,500 calorie diets, cutting out all of your carbs, those kinds of things. When your body has done that enough, what happens is every future diet that you do, it freaks out as if it's going to have to go through the misery of the last time. Now, I will tell people all the time, if you want to do keto and stuff like that, that's fine. I just want you to always recognize that whatever you pick to do, you need to be able to do it for the rest of your life. This, like losing weight cannot be a quick fix. Losing weight has to be a lifestyle you adopt. And there's lots of different ways to do it. But when you look at like a lot of times what happens with my clients is they come in and I teach them just 4 basic rules. Water and sleep is 2 of them. Like, I mean, I think every human can agree we're supposed to get some sleep and we're supposed to drink water. Those are 2 basic human needs that so many of us try to override that our body cannot survive without. Then you're just going to, like, I have them plan their food for each day just to get them into the habit of choosing what they want to eat versus feeling that they always have to follow something external. And I have them do that so they can repair the relationship with all types of foods because a lot of it's been traumatized from past diets, villainizing food, putting morality on food.
So
Like
you're
I tell,
talking about planning, and there's no restrictions. You can eat whatever you want. You just have to plan it ahead of
you
time.
have to plan what you're going to eat ahead of time, just in one day. So you're just going to wake up in the morning and you're just going to plan what you're going to eat for the day, knowing your emotional needs, your physical needs, your time constraints, like all the things, your entertainment needs, whatever they are, because I don't believe that food is just fuel. I think that that is a terrible definition that the diet industry has tried to put on food.
Well, that's probably
Food,
what the military would say, right? That military diet.
Right. It's like food is fuel, and it's like in many religions, there's a lot of cultural meaning behind food. If we start saying I have a lot of clients who are Jewish, and they love what is I can't think of it. It's delicious too. It's basically like fried bread. They
Mhm,
always
mhm.
tell me during I don't, it's not Passover, it's during Hanukkah, they eat basically this bread dripping in grease. It's
Right.
but it's delicious, it's got so much cultural representation for them. Well,
Yeah.
if somebody says the keto land that bread is evil, well, you also just said that whatever I do for my religion is evil too.
Yeah.
So we wrap morality up on food too much. And, I don't know what you believe, but I don't think you're going to go to heaven and God's going to be like, oh my God, you had Twinkies on Thursday, April 26th. You're out. No,
Right.
I don't think it's checking your food logs. So it's important for us to realize that food has so many different roles that it plays in our life. So we want to plan for all the roles, but we
Mhm.
just want to be intentional about it. The problem with most of us is that what we're doing is we're not being intentional. Like we're eating emotionally and we're not doing it intentionally.
Yeah.
It's like if I go on vacation, I may want to have nachos at my favorite restaurant and I'm doing it for pure entertainment.
Mhm.
I want to honor that version of me. But what I don't want to do is have nachos tonight because I had 6 hours of podcasts to do.
Yeah.
So
Well,
it's
I
just
think,
pulling that all together.
yeah, this applies to pretty much any area of our life, right? Not just food.
Mhm.
It's like, why are we doing what we're doing? I'm
Yes.
working a lot on my sleep right now, on a evening bedtime routine, on a morning routine.
Mhm.
And I have to spend a lot of time thinking about, okay, I'm intentionally doing this. I'm planning for this. Why am I doing that?
Mhm.
Right? Am I trying to beat myself up in some way? Is it like the world saying I should? Right? I think food is just the easiest thing because we all have to eat food, right?
Yeah, you're
Multiple
always
times a
going to have
day.
to. Yeah, you're like one of the things. My grandfather was an alcoholic, and I remember him telling me this one time. he uh he had quit drinking. He also was a lifelong smoker. He quit smoking. And after he quit drinking and smoking, he gained he was always thin. He gained 20 pounds. And he was determined to get back to his Marine military weight. And he was in his 60s. And he was like, I'm going to lose some weight. Just felt confident because he had quit drinking and quit smoking that this was going to be so easy. A weekend, he comes up to me and he's like, if I ever say anything about losing weight being easy, you feel free to slap me. He was like, I've give up drinking and I've give up smoking. He was like, but you can't just give up food. It's just there always. You
Yeah.
have to eat it. So
Oh,
food is the great equalizer. We have to build if we want to really lose weight, we can't just take foods away. We have to build a relationship with food. We have to build a relationship with ourselves. And in order to build a relationship, you got to understand what the relationship is. You got to look for that past diet trauma, all the things. For a lot of my women join my program, the fourth basic that we were talking about, the three, the planning, the next one is we only eat when we're hungry, legit hungry, not starving, but I'm starting to get hungry. This is when my body needs food. I have had enough. My body doesn't need more. I may want more. I may think I deserve more. I may not want to waste my money. There's lots of emotional reasons why I might want to keep going. But at the end of the day, you think intentionally. You only eat it when you plan the foods intentionally. You only eat them when you're hungry. You stop it enough. You drink your water and get your sleep. I swear anyone can lose weight. But we have to get all of the other stuff cleaned up because for my women, when they have past diet trauma, when they have to stop it enough, it activates fear of getting hungry later.
yeah.
It activates missing out.
Mhm.
And so that's why we have to do all this mental work around all of it.
Mhm. Yeah. I was actually just thinking today about a very, very simplified idea of the work we do as coaches is, where have you disconnected from yourself because you don't want to feel?
Yeah.
And also, where are you feeling too much? right? And in my
Yes.
mind, I was like, oh, we're so focused as humans on, I want to feel better. I want to feel better. I want to feel better. But we're not really focused on the magnitude of the feeling, whether it's positive or negative, right? So where are we feeling too much and it feels overwhelming? And where have we disconnected and we're not feeling enough, right? So I'm going to
Yeah.
just throw in there, part of the work I do with trauma is learning your body, the sensations in your body. Do I feel activated? My clients call it anxiety. And
Mhm.
then that word is all loaded. So they're like, oh, I shouldn't feel anxious. Da, da, da. And I say, well, okay, what if we just say, oh, I'm activated. I got some energy going here. Well, immediately they're just like, oh, yeah, that's
Yes.
okay. That's okay to have energy in my body, right?
Yes.
So there's that element too of just, am I connecting? Am I disconnecting? What am I feeling? How much am I feeling it? Because some of us, I dare say those of us who really are on a mission to feel better, quote unquote, feel better. And many of us are very sensitive. So it's not that we're feeling wrong, it's that we're feeling too much, right?
Yes.
Like it's overwhelming these emotions. And
Yes.
that's when we go to food, or in my
Yes.
case, that's when I go to fruit snacks, sugar, right? Because I'm like I have that activation. I'm like, I don't know what, and I find myself standing in the pantry. And then I've learned, like I've started a habit of, am I hungry? Oh, actually, I'm not hungry.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. And that's part of learning yourself and your relationship with yourself and your relationship with food or whatever other thing you go to. Right.
For
So,
sure. One of the things I have my clients do, like, especially when they think they're hungry, because hunger is like one of those things, like we can convince ourselves we're hungry because we just want to do something with that energy. And
mhm.
food is like an easy thing to do, and it's so easy to talk yourself into hunger. I mean, it's amazing how easy it is to talk yourself into, like, oh, I should eat that. I deserve it. I don't know when I'll eat this again, or whatever it may be. I just always tell them, in that moment, before you decide to eat, just ask yourself, if I wasn't going to eat, what am I like? What is it that I truly need in this moment? Because very often, if you notice, like, I'm not actually hungry, I'm just kind of talking myself into being hungry, then I have a client who one time said this. I was interviewing her. She was a success story. She had lost like 50 pounds. And she said, Corinne, there was just one day when it all started clicking after everything you said. I opened the refrigerator and I was just looking for something to eat. And she said, what I had learned is that my pattern was, when I was seeking something to eat, like just yes, no, yes, oh, that looks okay, that I knew I wasn't hungry. I had watched myself eat so many times doing that I realized that I was usually stressed, feeling guilty about something, like there was something underlying going. She said, I closed the fridge and just said, Tanya, the answer's not in there. The answer's inside you. And she
Mm.
said, from that moment on, she just started really trying to figure out, like, if I'm not going to eat over this, what do I need right now? What can I give myself right now? Like, what's going on for me? And it was so helpful for her.
Mhm. Yeah, I've really learned, this is something I learned through my trauma certification. Oftentimes we say like, oh, I feel like I need to do something. And our brain says, oh, that means I need to work, right? Like
Yeah.
sit at the computer and work. But what our bodies usually mean when it's like, oh, I feel like I need to do something. I need to go, go, go. That sort of stress or active energy. Our bodies are saying, I want to move, right? So you
Mm-hmm.
think about 100, 200 years ago, I need to do something. It's like, I need to go plow the field.
Right.
I need to go milk the cows and bring these like heavy buckets of milk in, right? We're like activating our bodies.
Mm-hmm.
So something I'm really playing with a lot with my clients when they are talking about anxiety or some kind of active energy is, okay, let's move. We shake our hands, we rub them together, we stand up, we pace, we push against a wall, like we do something to activate the body because
Yeah.
that active energy is metabolized by movement.
Yes.
Right. So that's like so good to know. Some people might be going to the fridge or the pantry when really their bodies are like, I want to move. We've got energy here.
Brendon Burchard teaches something. I think it's Qigong. It's like Quijong or something like that. But if
Mhm.
you look him up on the internet, he has these activation exercises that he does, like when he's just trying to even get ready for a call or whatever, but it also can be a stress reliever. And it's like, you basically, you pound with your fists on your lower back. Like there's
Mm.
several things that you do. There's like this like series of breathing and stuff. And it kind of like it dissipates that energy. So if you have nervous energy, it will help you get the nervous energy like kind of out of your system. And then there's also, you can use it to get yourself ready to do something. So like if you're dreading something, or you feel like you need to do something that where you're going to be focused or on, you can do those exercises also to kind of get your like adrenaline up just a little bit. Because a lot of times when we're dreading doing something, we don't have enough of the stress cortisol to get us going, or the stress hormones to get us going.
Mhm,
Like,
mhm.
a lot of times when you talk about adrenaline and cortisol, people are just like, oh, like, like they don't want cortisol. I'm like, no, you actually do. We don't want an overuse of it, and we don't want it coursing through our veins because we're thinking like a poop head all day long. What we really want is cortisol in a useful way. And so like, just even for, for a lot of people, learning some of these little hacks are very helpful. Like a lot of times, like between podcasts, I just walk a couple laps in my house to kind of like breathe different air than my office, like just to get my like mind, like, okay, we're changing gears. We're getting ready for the next one, just to kind of clean out some stuff. It's
Yeah.
very helpful.
Yeah. Our bodies are not meant to be sedentary, and we are so sedentary in our culture.
Yep.
So it was just something like a hands-on thing that I thought
Yeah.
of, that instead of going to the pantry or the fridge, maybe I just need to do 5 squats, right? Maybe I need to like do some jumping jacks. It's just part of learning your body, right? So we're
Yes.
kind of bringing this idea of weight loss and food and all of that, all those triggers, alongside trauma and emotion work.
Yeah.
And they are so closely related. So,
Well, and I think the important thing for, especially in the weight loss side of things for everyone, is like when it comes to urges, and that's what we're really talking about here, this urge to eat when I have no good reason other than like something going on in my head. Like my body is not telling me that I actually need some food. So now I'm eating for other reasons. You have got to be willing to try things. Every single one of us is an individual, and we're all very different. Some of my clients, some meditation, some of that stuff works. Some of my clients doing some activation work like this works. Some of my clients have to think through it.
yeah.
Some of them just have to physically remove themselves and just be like, I need a change of like arena. Like if I stay close to my pantry, I'm more likely to go in. It's like a magnet. So I tell them like, all right, if you know that during a certain time of day or a certain emotion or whatever is, put physical space between the two of you, so that you have time to lower the trauma response, or you have time to lower the urge. Like we want to let some of that feeling process out so that the logical brain can come back online. Because that's another big key component, I think, that where trauma and weight loss really intersect is the moment you start going into either big or little t type trauma responses, where your body's like scared or anxious or whatever, that logical brain says, oh, I'm supposed to take a break. It's not safe for logic to be here right now. We need automatic responses. That's what we need.
Yeah.
So giving yourself physical space or some type of a process that's quick, efficient, and easy that you can go through to allow some of that emotion to clear out, the chemicals that are pulsing through your blood to clear out, let it clear out a little bit. Then your logical brain can come back online. I just watch so many of my clients beat themselves up because it's like, I know I shouldn't eat. And every day I say I'm going to do better. But by the evening, I'm so stressed, I'm so overwhelmed, and I'm so tired. I just find myself eating. And it's like, well, it makes sense. But now what we need to do is we got to figure out, one, how do we like address what's really going on? But until we can unwind all of it, we need a process for you to like calm your nervous system down, put some space between you. Like I tell my clients all the time, like if you've got like, say you like what is it that you call your fruit chewies?
Fruit snacks. Yeah.
Your fruit snacks. All right. So one hack that I give my weight loss clients all the time is put your snacks that you most often are it's not that these snacks are bad.
Right.
It's just like, we just don't want to be eating them because we have nothing else to do, or because we're tired, or we're overwhelmed or stressed. Put them in a container that's very different than what you have now, that has an incredibly hard cap to get off, and put them in that cabinet above your refrigerator that no one uses because you can't reach it.
Right.
That's the new home. So if I want it, I've got to crawl on the counter. I've got to get a ladder. I've got to do these things, because when I'm doing all of that activity and I'm doing all of it, my reasoning brain has more and more time to come online, versus it just is on the convenient counter sitting there staring at me. At the moment, my brain gets hijacked.
Yeah, totally. Brilliant. Brilliant. Well, this has been so amazing. So many useful tips, and yeah, all of it I think will be so useful for everyone listening. Thank you for coming on. Any last words of wisdom as we wrap up?
Um, but just the only other thing I would say, just in terms of that's been helpful for me in terms of trauma, is at the end of the day, if I can't do anything else, I like to put my hand over my heart, because I always feel like it gives like a protective cage over it. Because a lot of times for me, like, I'm always worried about, at the end of the day, being left behind, or, my heart getting hurt in some way. I
Mhm.
just protect it, and I take a few deep breaths, and I just tell myself, I am safe right now. Like, I do that over and over again until I realize I got a lot of thinking going on. I got a lot going on in my head, but there's actually nothing happening to me in this moment. And that right there has always been enough for me to just be like able to take a breath. Whether I do anything else, I'd rather do that than just go eat.
Yeah.
And that's been very calming for me. So it's something I started doing a couple years ago, and it's just been a game changer. So I thought I would share it with your audience when it comes to just
Awesome.
some of their general worries and stuff.
Yeah, I love that. I love hand over heart. Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't even think I have talked about it on the podcast because it's such a fabric of what I do. Some of those little things you just overlook them sometimes. So,
Mhm.
so awesome. Well, thank you so much. We will have links to all of the things that Corinne does. She has a podcast, all the stuff that I mentioned in the bio. All the links are there. You guys can see how amazing she is and how experienced and really brilliant that her work is. So go check her out because she is awesome.